guns earlier. We're playing Army.
Army?
Boom, headshot. Boom, headshot.
No, God. I am serious. This is...
I'm burning. That is your GW2 Daily.
Hello everyone and welcome to our GW2 Daily that is going to be on the Ranger class changes that came in with the recent patch for Halloween. I'll let Braden take it away. Go, Braden, go!
Well, hello and thank you. Hello, fellow Attic Gamers. Yeah, today we're going to be talking about the Ranger changes, and I have a list here. Took some notes and we did some research for you guys so you can understand all of the changes. Then I think towards the end I will just hand it over to Saris and let him do a little explanation. He was telling me something a little while ago about Rangers and Rangers pets, and I wanted him to share that with you as well. So that actually leads into our question of the day, which is, do you think Rangers pets are overall more beneficial or more harmful to the way the Ranger works? Make sure you guys are leaving your comments in the section below, and let's get a conversation started. If you are, don't be afraid to leave a comment. We don't bite. We try to respond to actually all of the comments, all of the commenters. I mean, we really want to get a discussion going with you guys and see what you guys have to think. We know that our opinions aren't always going to be agreeable or whatnot. So if you disagree or you agree, then let us know. So for the first change, there's actually Saris, there's a lot of bug changes in the Ranger, and actually a couple quite severe. Now there's a couple that actually hurt the Rangers overall that they fixed it, but there's also a couple that helped them out. The first one, the big bug, was Nature's Voice. This trait no longer carries the effects of evasive purity as well as the on-shot swiftness and regeneration. So Nature's Voice gives you swiftness and regeneration when you use a shout. And what it was doing before was another trait, evasive purity, was basically built into it. So even if you didn't bring evasive purity, what evasive purity does is when you dodge, it removes two conditions. I can't remember the exact ones. I think it's poison, blind and poison. So you didn't actually have to bring that before because the Nature's Voice was bugged. So even if you would dodge, it would proc the evasive purity even without having the trait. So they fixed that. That in a way, quote unquote, nerfs the Ranger, but it is correcting it. They have softened the fall, which is when you take falling damage, you cast Muddy Terrain. That they increased that to 5 targets instead of 3. That's because they're also changing the Muddy Terrain, just the regular skill, to have a maximum number of targets at 5 instead of 3. Sick'em has the new Revealed for the Ranger. It's a shout that applies 4 seconds of Revealed on the targeted enemy. This makes Rangers somewhat of an anti-thief class. We'll see how it works out and how well people use it in their builds. I'm actually quite excited to see how people use it. And Companion's Defense. Now this one makes a lot of sense to me, Saris, because this is the one when you dodge, you gain protection. You and your pet gain protection. But instead of doing it when you dodge, they actually changed it to when you get to the end of your dodge roll, you gain the protection. And your pet still gets it at the beginning. Because if you were to get protection at the beginning of your dodge roll, you're wasting a good second and a half of the protection you would have been getting from it because you're already in your dodge roll. So I think it definitely makes sense to change that. Now another big bug fix, and this actually helps out the Ranger, had to do with the skill Barrage on the longbow. Infamous NX on the Guild Wars 2 forums posted this, and he figured out this bug. And what he did is he tested Barrage with 0 trait points in marksmanship, and he was getting 1.5 seconds of cripple per application. Then he put 30 points into marksmanship, and marksmanship has increased condition duration as the trait line bonus. So you would assume that the cripple on Barrage would be longer, but he was receiving only 1.25 seconds of cripple per application. He later, after quite a bit of testing, realized that the trait to blame was Eagle Eye in marksmanship. So when you had Eagle Eye, it was actually nerfing your Barrage, and you weren't getting nearly as much cripple as you should have been getting. So that's something that they also fixed in this patch. Now, I consider this a nerf. I think you can argue that it might be a buff just because you could say that it cleanses your conditions faster, but Healing Spring, the water fields from Healing Spring has actually been reduced to 10 seconds, but it pulses every 2 seconds now instead of every 3, and it provides the same amount of regeneration and condition removal, but you would remove the conditions faster. But in a way, I would consider it a nerf just because you lose the time of the water fields, which as an elementalist, when I played my double dagger and we had a ranger in the group, I always took advantage of that water field being up. Okay, a couple more traits is, or a couple more changes is intimidation training. Now this trait now has an attack that cripples enemies instead of directly applying cripple to enemies around the area. Uh, the other one also with the pet changes is vigorous training, and this is something that I really like, that they're taking the specific pet skills and making it apply to all pets. The trait now grants 5 seconds of vigor to nearby allies when swapping any pet in combat. So before it used to be moas, birds, and jellyfish, but now this trait actually applies to all pets, which makes it a much more useful trait. And I think it's much more versatile in making a build. It's something that a lot of builds can benefit from.
Definitely was
And
one
there
of the
was,
weaknesses. Hopefully
yeah,
they
you
go
want to talk
along the
about that a
same
little bit?
route. To go along the same route, and they change the other abilities to apply to all the pets as well. Because at the moment, if you go into the Beastmaster line, the pets that you bring are pretty much you can only get a certain amount of abilities from the Beastmaster line, which is supposed to affect pets the most. And it's kind of the abilities themselves aren't even that strong that you can get from look at, say, rending attacks, where your pet will do a bleed on whenever they crit. It's not a very strong bleed because the pets themselves don't have a very high amount of condition damage. Kind of a lot of these attacks kind of weak, and then again it's shrunk even more because you can only use it with certain types of pets, which makes it a hell of a lot less useful. You get things like stability training and stuff that, if it were for all pet types, then you could definitely use them better. Because at the moment, I think the Beast Mastery tree line, the trait line in itself is well, a lot of the master traits are far inferior compared to the ones that you would get on other classes, the other master traits that you get on other classes. Which is, it's a bit of a shame because that's for a class which you're forced to take your pet, and it's taken damage away from you because of it. Your line that increases your pet is kind of weak in itself. It's a little bit I wanted to add it in.
It's definitely limits your options as well, which is unfortunate for a game like Guild Wars 2, where you think they would have a lot of options, because you would have to limit your trait selection and your pet selection based on what's available there. Instead of, I mean, we were talking about this months and months ago about the Ranger and how it would be great if they got rid of the specific pet traits and made it apply to all the pets. And that way, it really opens up options for you as a ranger. So you could take, vigorous training now without taking a moa or without taking a bird. And I just think that it'll definitely add some more options for the ranger. But since that's all I had for the notes for the ranger changes, they also made quite a few pet changes, like reducing the cooldowns on some of the special abilities that pets have. But instead of doing that, you guys can visit the Guild Wars 2's forums and check out the October 15th updates. But instead of going through that, I wanted to let you kind of take the floor, because we were having that discussion before about how pets actually affect rangers, and you explained it to me so well that I figured, why not give you the opportunity to try to explain to our viewers so they can understand, because you made me really understand how bad it was for rangers, the effects that pets actually have on the rangers, if you wanted to talk about that, especially when it comes to like stat selection and things like that.
with the ranger at the moment, you've got your pet and yourself as the ranger, and the thing is, most of your damage is divided between the two entities. The problem is when you get extra gear that increases your stats, your pet is not affected by it at all. So that percentage of damage that you was initially divvied on to your pet is no longer enhanced by the extra stats that you. So it's overall a weaker state. It means that going for like power builds, you're at a major disadvantage compared to the other classes, just from that alone.
And you're telling me how it didn't affect, like, one of the more popular ranger builds now is going very high toughness and condition, and how it didn't affect those stats nearly as much as it would trying to do a power build with the ranger.
Yeah, it doesn't. Because of the fact that it's just the damage that was divided, it means that if you go to highly defensive, you're getting the most out of that. At the same time, it means you can spec your pet to be a bit more offensive in itself, so that you can get more out of it. And if you go for things like condition damage, which is universal, it's a universal type of damage. So the damage from it is not divided between you and your pet. You can get the most out of it. So if you can go for like a defensive type condition build, it's one of the only viable options for a ranger at the moment. Just from that pet thing, because you're forced to have the pet on you, and the pet itself isn't exactly the smartest thing in the world. I think of it as the only mechanic for a class that actually really hinders it. Because of that, definitely you can't. It's very hard to make a power build with it. If you go into full, you're not getting the most out of your class. Your pet is still going to be lagging behind and not scaling with you. It's even with buffs. If you get buffs, your pet only gets them if you've got one of the traits in the nature magic line, and even then it doesn't get the full durations. It just gets a different version of it by the trait. Like if I cast the Call of the Wild, and then it's supposed to give the boons to my pet, it doesn't give the exact boons. It'll give, like, instead of 19 seconds of free, it'll just give 3, which is a bit of a downer as well.
Which that actually leads us into the question of the day again, that I'll remind you guys. Do you think that pets overall are more of a hindrance, or they're actually more beneficial to the ranger as a mechanic? And I think also, Saris, you make really good points. I think also with the control of the pets, that there's such a limitation that they give you for the control of your pets. I mean, if you look at other MMOs, with even in World of Warcraft, I think hunters had a lot more control over their pets. And I just when they limit you in that way, it's I don't think they should, especially a game that has kind of a high skill ceiling like Guild Wars 2 does, and then you don't give, so you have so much damage on your pet, like you say that you're splitting your damage with your pet, and they're not giving you enough control to really actually control that damage. So I think maybe that's another thing that they could work on with the ranger.
Yeah, it actually goes into one of the things that one of the devs said before, that giving more control to the pet would be too hard for people. And I'm just thinking, I can't believe you just said that. It might be too hard for some, but it's not exactly. They don't have to use that control thing, so you can just leave the default pet how it operates now, and then have those extra options. You don't have to take away anything from it, because at the moment you're forced to give up a command just to tell your pet to sit in a particular area that is not right on top of you. To give up a utility slot, which in itself makes you a hell of a lot weaker. You can't even tell your pet to use specific ability. It's just off on its own, which is it makes the pet itself a liability. Becomes extremely fidgety to use. It turns the class mechanic into something that is not beneficial, but a hindrance to the class in itself. One of the things that they brought up was that the elementalists, a lot of them would just stay in fire. They wouldn't use the class mechanic to change attunement. But that brings up other problems with sometimes fire just being the most effective thing to have. And it's kind of shocking that they would actually say something like that. A bit of hope, though, they'll actually come around and give you more control of the pet. I don't see there being anything wrong with giving people more control over their interactions of their minions and themselves. It means that if you go into the higher levels of gameplay, the pet in that class becomes like a lot more. You've got a lot more options in what you can do. You can micromanage your pet and yourself at the same time and pull off some magnificent things.
I think they should always give players more options. It shouldn't be where they implement something where the pet just won't work if you can't control it. The pet, like you said, the pet should still work the way it does now. But if you give players the options to separate themselves from other players because they've kind of mastered that system, and then especially when you're looking into PvP, you need something to be able to separate yourself. Whereas the pet now is just you're limited to just the choice of your pet, where you can't control it in such a way to where you can separate yourself from other rangers or even other players of other classes.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be like StarCraft. I mean, there's so many options to it, and they don't limit things just because they think it might be too hard for people. But that's why I can never be a professional StarCraft 2 player or any type of RTS player, because I can't handle all of it. But I could probably still beat some people. But you put all those things in there because the people who can truly master it really separate themselves as these are the real pros of this certain RTS game.
And even that, when you're giving them the control, it means that they can slowly make themselves learn it and be able to make more and more out of the class. Because if the pet, if I wouldn't mind it, how the pet is currently, it wasn't forced upon you, it takes a portion of your damage away from you just for the sake of having a pet, which means that the mechanic itself is a hindrance you don't have full control of it. That's pretty sad. But with the
PvP, it's quite difficult to keep your pet alive. So if it does die, then that's also you're losing all that damage for a while. With AoEs being so as prevalent as they are.
I think when the guy was asked the question, the dev, he was thinking that they meant that you have to manually control all of the abilities, and that would be it. You wouldn't have any of the audio cast. But I think in World of Warcraft, even though I despise the game, it had a good system where you could turn your pet abilities to auto cast. So if you didn't want to control it, you didn't have to. But the option was always there to manually manage the thing. It wasn't taken. The choice wasn't made for you. You were given the ability to make the choice. Something that
and it
should
worked
always
okay
be.
both ways. But if you did it manually, you would actually be more efficient. Yeah.
I think he was thinking
just better
people, if the control was there, but they didn't have the automatic part of it, that people were just going to be like, oh, the pet's bad, or this is too hard. But if you can just make it so it still automatically controls it, but you can turn that on and off, or even auto-cut particular abilities of it that you want it to do, and then you can manually control the rest of it. For instance, the Drakes at the moment have a blast finisher on them, which you want. That is something you definitely want to control in itself. It will make the pet something that is a lot stronger. I think even one of the things that should have been included was not having guard as a utility, but as a pet thing in itself.
Yeah,
where you can tell it to sit somewhere. Yeah, it's a move here button. I mean, it's one of those things that should have been naturally incorporated into the class. I do feel really strongly for the Ranger. It's one of the classes that I've wanted to, be on par with other classes. It was my first character to get full ascended gear, even though it wasn't one of my mains, which is at the time. There's ascended weapons now, which I haven't quite got to it. I'm working on it. But yeah, really, really taking care of it. It's a bit sad when you look at it that it's limited in what it can do because it's a companion.
Well, you do have the glimmer of hope that they changed the vigorous training to let it apply to all pets, and I think that's a great start. And you see you do some good spots of hope like throughout some of these changes. So let's just cross our fingers and hope for the future. And I think we should end this episode by me shooting arrows in your head.
Well,
Bang
there's
bang
actually one other
headshot.
thing I wanted to add. A lot of people say that your pet, if it goes into a dungeon, it dies. It doesn't have to die. If you actually trait guard at the moment, even though it should be naturally incorporated into your class, it gives it protection. Pretty much 100% protection uptime, and as long as you tell it to go in and out at the right times, then it stays alive. I know there are some encounters where it just will die because of how these encounters work, which is a bit of a shame. Really, because it means that when that pet is gone, that part of your class is gone. It's dead. You've lost like a percentage of your damage that is unavoidable to lose. Uh, it's terrible. Whereas you look at other classes, their mechanics don't take away from the class if you use them. They're still there, come back, but the ranger pet's dead. You've got a weapon to swap it out, and you got your other pet, in which that'll die if the same cause comes again. Then it's gone. It's out. It's dead. You got to wait for the whole cooldown to come back, and it's just going to die again. You spend most of the fight with nothing.
Are you trying to ignore the fact that I'm shooting arrows in your face?
Yeah, I am. Anyway.
Well, there are definitely. I actually have a good follow up to that. There are definitely, like, if you look at the Interblade Retreat encounter, there's no way you can get your pet to survive just because the lasers are gonna kill it. You can't tell it to jump up onto the boxes and things like that. I wonder if they can add some sort of buff when your pet dies, like a little berserker, like a revenge type buff. So when your pet dies, you get this extra damage buff for maybe like 5 seconds or something.
I think what's needed, those encounters really need to take into account the fact that you've got a pet there that can't do anything. Like he can't climb on a box. He can't jump over a laser. He's a lizard, and it's part of that class. It means if you're bringing that class, people are looking at you going, do we really want to bring you? Because you're losing a big portion of your damage from your pet dying to this mechanic.
Yeah, but what are you gonna do? You're gonna let the encounters suffer just because of the ranger class?
It's not letting the encounters suffer. It's making it so that the pet still survives through it. Like, say, the lasers ignore the pets or something like that. I know with the one of the side effects of one of the changes they made for mobs that are out of reach, that turns them invulnerable. In this Farnia encounter, what happens is if you're a Mesmer and you summon your phantasms, and he goes up the top, it becomes an untargetable thing. So your phantasms actually become invulnerable. It wasn't intended, but that's what happened. And it actually, you think, oh, look, my phantasms can survive through this. That's pretty damn cool. Something like that.
Oh, I wonder if they'd actually do something like that.
Whereas,
it would be nice.
Yeah, normally your phantasms, they would just die. You've got no control over them. They don't do anything. They just something similar, like is your pet doesn't have to deal with the mechanic because it can't. It doesn't have those capabilities. Neither do you have the options to make it do that. It's impossible.
Well, clearly you're not a good enough Pokemon master. You didn't train your pet well enough.
Rangers.
Huh?
No, see Rangers. Even though.
Alright, well, I think that's pretty good discussion on Rangers. We talk about Rangers a lot, actually. And even though I don't play Ranger, this is my level 3 Ranger I'm on right now. But I've learned a lot from Rangers from you. So let's wrap this up. Make sure you guys are leaving your comments below on the discussion we had about Rangers and what you think about the changes, and overall what you think could be good for the Rangers. Also, remember to answer our question of the day, whether you think pets are hindering or benefiting the Ranger class. Maybe your opinion's changed while you watch this. But if your opinions disagree, then make sure you let us know. And make sure you like, share, favorite this video.
Subscribe.
Thanks, guys. Subscribe.
This is Ceres in the Wafer Foothills signing off. Bye, everyone.
This is me shooting you in the face.